Just a minute. Okay, so chapter 20, studying about communities and ecosystems. We have biodiversity. And what is biodiversity? It's all the living things around a particular area, and the key thing is the variety of it. So the more different type of organisms that there are, the more genetic diversity that you will have, and also species diversity. And of course, with more species in a particular ecosystem, the ecosystem will have its own diversity as well. So first, beginning off with genetics diversity. So we have a variety of genes within a certain species. That's what genetic diversity is all about. It's very important because the genetics of a particular species will help them to adapt to environmental changes. So if there is some kind of decrease in genetic diversity, such as those that are endangered species, then they're not going to have as much capability to adapt to the environment. Just for example, like just say like us organisms, humans in general, our body temperature is around 37 degrees Celsius and stuff like that. So we have a certain range of temperature that we can live in or something. So in response to this, if someone ends up becoming a mutant, kind of thing, and are able to live at extreme temperature, just say boiling degrees, this is just hypothetically speaking. Of course, no one can, at least as of this point, no. If something, someone has that kind of DNA and can be able to live at that extreme conditions, then if something happened to the Earth where somehow the temperature, global warming became so high that everything is raised up to 100 degrees Celsius and everything. Well, because of that genetic diversity within humans, and that particular person having that gene can survive in that condition, they could continue to adapt to that kind of environment. However, if we are talking about endangered species, we only have a certain amount of genetic material in that particular species to begin with. So there's no way that if some certain environmental changes occur, they might not be able to adapt to that change to that environment. And if they don't adapt to it, they'll become extinct. So it's always good to have that genetic diversity, which is basically what I just said there. The thing also is that with less and less genetic diversity, it may also hinder biotechnology as well. When we find new organisms, they potentially have genes that may help us develop new medicines and products. So there are things like that we actually use different organisms to help include our human genome to produce something like insulin or for people who are diabetics, so that we can have inject insulin for those who have diabetes. So other things. So basically, it's just saying that with the decrease in genetic diversity, it will hinder the progression of letting us produce new medicines and other products as well. Species diversity is like the name implies, the variety of species on the Earth. Us humans, we tend to have a great impact, as we saw last week, on ecology, and we have made an impact that causes a decrease in the species diversity, and some of them has become extinct because of that. 12% of known birds are already endangered, like this red-crowned crane. 21% of known mammals are also endangered as well. There's about 30% of known amphibians that are endangered. And there's about greater than 20% of fresh water fishes that are either extinct or endangered. 200 species already are extinct, like the Chinese river dolphin and these golden toads that are found in your textbook, and 790 are in danger or threatened. You don't have to memorize the numbers on these. It's just to show you the impact that we've had on the ecosystem on this earth, different ecosystems on this earth. Talking about ecosystems, ecosystem diversity, like the name implies, is the variety of ecosystem that we have. So what happens when one species becomes extinct within an ecosystem? What's going to happen if one particular species becomes extinct? If it's a predator-prey kind of situation, what's going to happen? Just say the prey becomes extinct.
There's going to be overpopulation of the
Very good. It's going to endanger the predator, right? Because there's no more of its natural prey. If it has no more natural prey, then they themselves cannot sustain themselves. So the example I did, it may affect other species. So we have this roadrunner and coyote here, and if we end up causing the roadrunners to become extinct, then eventually the coyotes will become extinct. But he can't even get the roadrunner to begin with, so I guess he would have been extinct long ago. And I don't know, it just made me thought about that, but anyways. So loss of ecosystem causes less benefits for human because, for example, if we have a forest to cause an entire forest to become extinct, or just trees in general, that's going to decrease the amount of carbon dioxide reabsorption within the trees. Remember how trees, they absorb the carbon dioxide, take it from the air so that they can produce the carbohydrates. Also, example, the coral reefs, they are rich in diversity. They have a lot of different organisms living within the coral reefs. So for humans, it's a source of food. It also helps prevent some protection, or sorry, not prevent protection, but helps have protection for storms, and also is good for recreation as well. And currently there's about 20% that's already destroyed by humans, and also 75% of the coral reefs are threatened by humans. Yeah, go ahead.
I just read this a little while ago. Is it true that deciduous trees, when the leaves fall, it produces carbon dioxide?
The decomposers might be able to produce like methane and other global warming gases. Yeah, that's possible. Causes of declining biodiversity. So there's habitat destructions, invasive species overexploitation, and also pollution. And we're going to go into many of these individually. So for habitat destructions, just like the name implies, it's the destruction of the habitat, and it's also the greatest threat to biodiversity. And we cause it by having agriculture, so we destroy the land or destroy a particular habitat so that we could either produce food for ourselves or produce not only produce but also meat, right? Cattle and other animals to feed on us. And also for urban development, so locations where we end up living, we have to destroy natural habitat for us to live in that particular area. Also forestry and logging, so to provide paper and other wood materials for our needs. Mining as well, so this is pretty much what we saw last week as well. Invasive species is also another factor as well. So this is the next greatest threat to biodiversity. And as we saw it on our Arroyo Seco trips, we ended up seeing a lot of invasive species that are already in our local environments. So the thing is, humans, they tend to introduce these species, and these species usually creates a lot of disruptions in the native species.
Reason why is because some of them compete for the same resources, and they're competing for the same resources, then one's going to win over the other potentially, or they're not going to be able to flourish as much. Another factor could be that the non-native species or invasive species may prey on the native species, so that if they end up eating or destroying the native species, then we're going to have less of that native species, and that might cause the ecosystem to become unbalanced. There's also some that are parasitic, so they end up living or feeding off of the native species as well. If I'm going too fast, let me know so I could go back. Okay. Am I already going too fast? Okay. Let me pause. Alright. Overexploitation. And this is when humans end up exploiting the wildlife so that it ends up causing so much harm to that population, preventing it from recovering anymore. So when we either harvest that wildlife, so some examples is like this American bison and the Galapagos tortoise and tigers in general. And these tend to become endangered species now because of us either hunting them for prizes or for their fur or just for game sometimes. So mahogany and rosewood are just another example of overexploitations. This is where we treasure these types of woods, so we purposely go and forest these particular trees, and so there's fewer and fewer of these trees nowadays. And plus, humans, they tend to produce a lot of pollution as well. So we have a lot of pollution within the air and also within the water as well. So this will also cause certain populations to decrease. And the thing about pollution is that it doesn't only affect local areas, it may affect locations that are further away from that area, such as acid precipitation or acid rain. Due to the water cycle, the amount of carbon dioxide and acidity in that particular source of water gets carried into the clouds through evaporation, and then it condenses and rains on a further location, and that may damage, like for example, this forest over here. You notice how some of the trees are damaged by the acid rain. Okay. So now going to a different topic about community ecology. This is just this interaction amongst the species, different species. So there's different types of interactions. These are called interspecific actions. These are the interactions between species. It could be positive or negative types of interactions. And we'll go into each one of these in the next following slides. Okay, the first one is interspecific competition. This is just direct competitions between two different species. So each population tends to have their ecological niche, meaning that this ecological niche is this all the biotic and also abiotic resources that are within that in that environment. So for instance, like these warblers, they tend to have certain types of resources specific for them in certain areas that they live in. And so, of course, if you have a competitor there, then you're going to be sharing the same same resources, and so it's going to hinder each species from flourishing as if they were doing it independently. This principle is called competitive exclusion principle. It's when they have very similar niches, ecological niches, but they cannot coexist with each other. An example of this is this paramecium. The paramecium is a protist, and looking at this particular graph, what can you tell me about this competitive exclusion principle? Put it into practice.
They have the same population density when they're apart, and when they're together, one of them overpowers the other.
Very good. So over here, they're grown in different cultures. Okay, they're grown in different petri dishes. Okay, that gives them enough nutrients for them to just grow on it. So if they're in separate petri dishes, then they will have pretty similar growth. What kind of growth curve is this? Is it logistic or exponential?
Exponential? I can't remember.
No, it's logistic. Remember, it has a carrying capacity, right?
Okay.
Exponential keeps on going up. Has
Oh.
no carrying capacity.
That's obvious now.
Okay. Okay. So if you grow them in different cultures, they both go up to a certain carrying capacity, pretty near each other. If you combine them both into the same culture now they're sharing the same resources and competing against each other, this interspecific competition. And you'll notice how this Paramecium caudatum is declining while the Paramecium aurelia is more flourishing. So this one outcompetes the other one. So it flourishes more, causing the death of the other species of Paramecium. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Mutualism is when both species benefit from each other. So an example is this algae with corals. The algae, they are these photosynthetic producers that provide sugar for the corals to be able to use them for energy. The corals, in turn, protects them, provides this outer structure so that the algae are protected from the other organisms within the sea. And also, they provide some waste products for the algae to be nourished on. So this interaction is called symbiosis. Symbiosis, depending on who you ask, can mean a positive interaction like mutualism. So some people combine the two words together, but not necessarily, because later on when we'll see like the parasitic kind of symbiosis, that's also called symbiosis. Symbiosis is a more general term. It's not very specific as whether the interactions is good interactions with each other or bad interactions with each other. It depends on who you ask, but I'm doing the more general sense of it. Predation. Pretty simple. Predators, they eat their prey. So the thing about predation is that the prey, they adapt to the different predators that they have. So for example, the pronghorns here, these antelopes, they have adapted through evolution to be very fast and agile, so to be able to escape from their predators. Previously, the predators will be a very fast predator, and so they'll have to outrun them. Porcupine quills have also been an adaptation to prevent things from biting or eating them. So the quills is like a defensive mechanism. And that poor little dog got a little too close to one. Cryptic coloration is basically camouflage. The camouflage is an adaptation to help prevent the predators from being able to see the prey. So as you can notice in this middle picture here, there's actually a seahorse here that looks pretty similar to a coral around it. Yeah, that's Snake camouflaging himself with a box. Warning coloration is also another adaptation by the prey to avoid predators. And this is when they have very bright colors and patterns so that animals will be able to recognize them and realize, we better not eat this particular animal because they have some kind of chemical defenses or toxins that will cause harm to me. Mimicry, we did see the coral and king snake last week. The coral and king snake, the coral one is the one that is actually poisonous while king snake isn't. But the king snake has color patterns that are very similar to a coral snake. So then those predators that are natural for the king snake will think that it's a coral snake instead and then prevent it from being eaten then. This one is a caterpillar here that looks similar like a snake's head. So another type of mimicry that's occurring there. Any questions regarding to any of these? Or? No? Yeah, go ahead.
The mimicry, when it covers stuff that's like to try to act like a poisonous food, but they're not actually poisonous.
Yeah, exactly. So that's basically what is happening here. Here we have the coral snake that is actually poisonous. Well, this actually isn't poisonous, but it looks similar to a poisonous one. So then the predators, they're not going to try to eat this because they think it's this. And they're not going to eat the king snake because it looks like a coral snake, which is actually poisonous. And that's like the same thing. Like this caterpillar is not really a snake, but it looks like a snake. So some predators that may want to eat the caterpillar, but since it looks like a snake, they might not want to eat it anymore. They'll probably flee from it. Herbivory is similar to predatory as well, but it's just the consumption of plants or plant parts or even algae by animals. So even though plants, they might not die by animals eating them, but the thing is it's not beneficial for plants because they'll have to put so much energy into rebuilding or any leaves that they lose or parts that they lose. So they've developed different types of adaptation. One is developing spines and thorns, kind of like this cactuar. So cactuses, they have these spines and thorns to prevent animals from eating them. Others provide some sort of chemical toxin. These chemical toxins, like the peppermint, cloves, and cinnamon, aren't toxic to us, but they are toxic to certain animals. So they might not want to eat these particular plants. Okay, the next interspecific interactions with the parasites and pathogens. The parasites, they actually live on the hosts themselves, so they live on whatever organism that they're within or on top of it. So the host provides the nutrients for the parasites. So an example of this is flatworms. So they actually live inside of organisms and just feed off of the hosts themselves.
Sorry, is it
Yeah.
negative, positive?
Yeah, it's a positive, negative again. Yeah, same thing. Negative, positive, same thing. Another one is ticks, lice, mites, mosquitoes. They attach to hosts, but temporarily, while the flatworm is more permanent. Yeah, a leech will be more of a temporary one. Roundworms and aphids, they are more of the parasites on plants. Roundworms are also known to be parasites for humans as well. This next picture that I'm going to show you, I want to warn you guys, if you are a little squeamish to look away, it's not a pleasant sight. It kind of traumatized me when I first saw it. So it's a word of caution. You don't have to see it because it's not going to be on the test or anything. But I just want to warn you ahead of time that the picture you're going to see is roundworms that has affected a child, and they're trying to get the roundworms out of the individual. So I'm going to put the picture up. I'll let you guys know when the picture's down, okay? Picture's up.
Ew.
Wow.
Okay, and picture down. Okay, so example. Probably because
Like,
they
did you not know?
didn't do
Like, was that a
anything
surprise?
or help the child during the time. It could be they didn't have the medical attention for that child. I don't think the child died. I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know enough information about the child.
What
Uh,
country would that
I don't know what country it was in. Okay, so pathogens, on the other hand, these are more microscopic organisms that live on hosts, such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protists. Okay, so we have protists that causes chestnut blight, and also the thing about this is symbiosis is once again mentioned here. Notice how it's more general term. It's just this interaction between the different species. So it could be positive. What was the positive symbiosis that we talked about a couple of slides ago? Called
mutualism?
mutualism. And in this particular case, it's one benefits while the other one's hinder. It's called either a pathogen or a parasite.
Okay, I'm going to pause right now so that we can take. Okay, trophic structure. This is the definition of trophic structure is just this feeding relationship within a community. So usually we have different trophic levels within a food chain. So notice how a food chain begins with the producers on the bottom level, and then from there we have different types of consumers, and finally we have decomposers, which isn't part of this food chain shown here, but there are decomposers as well. A food web is the same thing as a food chain. It's just that it's not as linear. It's not the primary consumers will eat the producers, but the secondary consumers on this only eat the primary consumers here, right? However, in here, notice how the secondary consumers, they not only eat the primary consumers, but some of them actually eat some producers as well, like this little rat. Some animal here. This animal here, they eat some of the primary consumers, but also eat the producers as well. So it's a little more convoluted. So in nature, most likely it'll be more like a food web than a food chain, but the food chain will help you kind of understand it in more simplistic format.
Did that say producers, consumers, and decomposers?
Yeah, producer, consumers, decomposers. And we'll go into each one. So producers, lowest trophic level. These are autotrophs. Autotrophs are those organisms that make their own chemical energy. And I've been rehashing this over and over again, but those who undergo photosynthesis, they'll convert what kind of energy? Light energy into?
Oh, chemical.
Chemical energy.
Chemical.
Yes, chemical energy. And this chemical energy are organic compounds, such as carbohydrates. So using the same graphics, light energy, and then plants will undergo what? Photosynthesis to make chemical energy, like this glucose. And when you have a chain of glucose, you're going to end up having longer carbohydrates, which is starch within plants. So plants, cyanobacteria, which are also called phytoplankton, and algae all undergo this photosynthesis, and they're the producers. There are some producers that convert chemical energy into organic compounds, so chemical energy to other chemical energy. These are the chemosynthetic producers. And does anybody remember where are these located at? These chemosynthetic producers that use, in the bottom of the oceans, those hydrothermal vents, where they utilize the inorganic compounds within these hydrothermal vents and then make these organic compounds. Yeah, go ahead.
Chemical energy to organic compounds?
to form, to make organic compounds. So it's just chemical energy making different type of chemical energy. Okay, the next trophic level are the consumers. So these consumers are heterotrophs. So unlike autotrophs that make their own energy, these have to actually get energy from other organisms, like producers or other consumers as well. So they cannot produce their own organic compounds. The primary consumers are also known as herbivores, and they eat primarily plants, algae, and the phytoplankton, the producers. These are the grazing animals. There are some insects, birds, and zooplankton that are these primary consumers. Then there's these secondary consumers. There are carnivores. Carnivores are organisms that only eat other organisms, while omnivores not only eat other organisms, but also eat producers as well. So here, the carnivores are those that eat the 100 by 100. And then, which I think they don't make anymore. And then this is all vegetarian, so just not to be biased for the carnivores there. So some animals, frogs, birds, spiders, small fishes, they will be this category of secondary consumers. Tertiary consumers, these are those that feed on the secondary consumers. So when you have snakes and bigger fishes, that's this tertiary level. And finally, we have the quaternary consumers, and these are the ones that eat tertiary consumers. You have hawks, killer whales, and stuff. I put in the T-Rex, Grimlock from. I'm such a nerd. And then finally, we have scavengers. These are also a type of consumers, but they don't eat living organisms. They feed on the dead or dying carcasses or dead plants. Okay. The hyena is categorized as a scavenger, but there are evidence that they actually do hunt in packs and eat living prey. So I think we're either recategorizing them or not, but right now it's still categorized as a scavenger, but they do have, they do prey on other organisms. The detritivores, these are animals that feed on decaying organic materials, and they convert it to inorganic materials, and such as earthworms and millipedes. Okay. Decomposers, on the other hand, these are just the same thing. They do the exact same thing. They convert organic material into inorganic material. But these are just more microscopic versions of it. So for example, we have prokaryotes and fungi as well.
Nice.
So basically the same thing, just ones are actually macroscopic, you could see with your naked eye, while the other is microscopic. And what happens after they produce the inorganic compounds? Who uses those inorganic compounds? No, not the consumers. Remember, it's a cycle, right? So we started off with what? Producers, and then consumers, they eat the producers, right? And the decomposers, they basically eat both the dying consumers and also the producers. And so, but they produce the inorganic material for the producers to gain nutrients. Okay, disturbances in communities. So disturbances, these are just these episodic times where there's some kind of damage to the biological communities. So we end up altering either the resources or destroying the organisms. This is caused by storm, fire, floods, droughts, and humans. So more of the same natural disasters and also humans in general. Yeah, there's a disturbance in the forest, yes. The natural disturbances are actually helpful. The reason why it helps create new habitats so that new organisms can flourish. However, we also have the humans that are part of this equation here. So either clearing the land for agriculture or clearing the land for development or hunting. So the reason why I have this picture is not for Gaston, but the little moose heads behind them for hunting. Not for his manly hair and stuff. But the thing about clearing land is that we have, since now we're clearing land, all these organisms that are supposed to be in this land that we cleared, now we have more interactions with those animals because they're trying to find places to live, right? We just destroyed their homes, so now they're trying to find other homes to live in, which could be our homes kind of thing, or really near our homes. So those animals, I just said that, they seek new areas where humans are located at. The problem with this is that there are some diseases that animals have that can carry over to humans. So they might have these diseases that infect humans. And certain ones are like HIV, which started off in a particular monkey strain. And then Ebola also, some animals carry Ebola viruses and it could be spread to humans. And of course, more recently with the bird flu, right, the bird epidemic that we kind of talked about. Well, we didn't talk about it, but in general on the news, you guys heard about it due to this interactions between humans and birds. So turning to a new kind of part of this chapter is the ecosystem. And the ecosystem, we're now considering not only the living things and their interactions with each other, but also the abiotic factors as well. So within an ecosystem, we have to talk about the energy flow, which is basically how energy passes within the ecosystem, and also the chemical cycling as well. So whenever chemicals are used and reused within an ecosystem. And over here, we already know kind of a little bit about this picture, right? We know that light energy converts to chemical energy through what process? Photosynthesis through what group of organisms?
Producers.
By the producers, very good. And we know that each conversion of energy, we produce heat, right, as a waste product, due to which law of thermodynamics?
Oh, that's the first law, right? Or is it the second?
Second
Oh,
law.
the first one is energy cannot be destroyed, so only transferred.
Very
to
good.
another.
First law of
Second law.
thermodynamics, energy is neither destroyed or created, but just transforms into one type of energy.
Okay.
So that's the energy flow. And then chemical cycling, we'll go into a little more in detail in the following slides. So energy usually enters as sunlight. Rehashing this over and over, producers, they utilize this light energy, convert it to chemical energy through the process of photosynthesis. So the primary production is this conversion of solar energy to chemical energy, and this is stored as biomass. Okay, there's about 165 billion tons of biomass produced by the primary producers, or primary production. And what biomass is all the mass of living material in a particular ecosystem. So the producers produces a lot of biomass, produces a lot of this living material. The consumers, on the other hand, they will take up the chemical energies from the producers when they eat them, or when they eat other consumers as well. So due to this eating and just converting the energy from one form to another, we lose some energy in the process due to the second law of thermodynamics, which we just talked about. Heat is released whenever energy is converted or used. And the thing is, we cannot digest everything that we eat, right? Some of the things that we eat is going to pass through our system and then end up in the toilet, hopefully, for most people. So not everything that we eat is digested into and be a part of our body. Some of it does come out the other end. And also we utilize some energy for cellular respiration. We haven't talked about cellular respiration yet. We will more in detail later on. So cellular respiration, what that is all about is for us to produce energy. Energy that we can actually move and track our muscles, utilize energy to provide energy for our pumps, proton pumps, and all these different types of microscopic protein molecules within our cells. So we'll talk more about that in the future, but that's what all cellular respiration is all about, to provide energy for us to utilize. So as you can see here, this little consumer here, eating on this producer, they utilize some of it for its own growth and stuff. Other times they can't utilize all of it, so some of the biomass is produced as feces, and other parts of it is that they use it to produce their own energy. So we have this pyramid of production occurring here. We have producers producing a lot of the biomass, but the primary consumers, they eat some of it and then have waste to the rest of it, and due to the other like second law of thermodynamics and also not being able to digest everything, we lose some of this biomass, and you notice how there's less and less biomass as we continually go up the trophic levels. So the primary consumers, we significantly reduce the amount of biomass. And then secondary consumers, when they prey on the primary consumers, even less biomass available, so on and so forth. And you'll notice why there's not like there is a quaternary consumer, but there's not that many more trophic levels due to the fact that we're losing biomass as we continue up the trophic level. So we lose a lot of energy for each trophic level. And yeah, that's what I just explained. Also, you'll notice on this thing, just looking at this, what can you tell me about this? Okay?
Corn is the main consumption.
Sorry, I didn't hear
Corn
it.
is the main consumption. Is it corn?
Corn?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, I mean, in this particular case, yes. But I mean, comparison to this thing here versus this.
Then this is the year.
If we eat the meat, we're getting less
Biomass?
than
Okay.
if we were to eat the corn straight up.
Very good. Notice how the biomass over here, if we eat just the producers, the corn in this particular case, we get a lot more biomass and we could feed a lot more people for the amount of biomass that we use here. Versus over here, we have this biomass here, corn, same amount of corn. But we first feed the corn to the cattle, right? So a lot of cattle are fed by the corn. But from all this cattle, you only feed like one person in this particular graph here. It just shows you that each trophic level, as we go up the trophic level, the less and less biomass we can sustain the people that actually feed on these food. Does that make sense? Like here we're feeding the cattle here, and then for the cattle, the meat eaters who only eat meat, there's going to be less people that we can feed versus if we were to just eat straight corn. Okay, chemical cycling. Chemical cycling, which begins with producers, they produce organic compounds through photosynthesis when they convert light to chemical energy. And that chemical energy are carbohydrates. So they not only use the light energy, but they also use a abiotic reservoir, which we'll discuss in the next thing, which is basically this reservoir of inorganic material. This inorganic, okay, what is organic, what is inorganic, just as a review?
What?
What's the definition of organic material? What's the definition of inorganic material? Does anybody remember? This is back in what? Chapter 1? 2 weeks ago, come on.
Long time.
Organic material, do they contain carbon or no? Yes, they do contain carbon, right? Like organic materials such as carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, I'm missing something. Oh, lipids as well, which you guys we didn't talk about yet, so you don't know. But those are all organic material. Inorganic are the ones that don't have carbon or hydrogen. So this inorganic material we're talking about, can anybody give me an inorganic material? What doesn't have carbon? Water. Yeah, okay, that's an inorganic one. The air we breathe in, right?
Oxygen.
It's just oxygen, O2, right? So that's inorganic as well. So this material from the air and also from the soil that the producer utilizes to be able to convert that stuff into organic material. So some of it is returned back to the air and soil as well as byproducts, but some of it is turned into organic material. Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
By definition, can you sell everything as organic then?
Yeah, a lot of things are organic material. Yes. What do you mean by that? Continue on.
Like in the store, like it says organic.
Yes. Okay, so I think the definition of that type of organic, it is still kind of, so they're in the process of making that product, they use all organic things. So meaning that they don't use, say, synthetic pesticides or something like that that has inorganic material in it or something like that. So everything is organic. But yeah, definition-wise, when we're talking about organic material having carbon and stuff, everything that they sell as organic, yes, that is organic material that we're actually buying. You're right about that. So strict definition-wise, yes, you're correct. Everything that they're selling, even those that are not producing organically, are still organic material for us to consume. Yes. So we have, so light energy utilizes photosynthesis to make chemical energy. And here's another chemical, the chemical here is glucose once again with a carbohydrate. And next we'll have, so the abiotic reservoir, chemical reservoir that are for inorganic material, so not within living organisms. Examples, air, with the different types of gases, water, like someone, Paris, did you mention water? Or who someone mentioned water. And also soils as well. Consumers, so they take in this chemical energy from the producers when they eat the producers or eat other consumers that probably eat producers. And some of the elements are returned back to the air and soil as byproducts as well. And that's why you see that process where producers, right, they get nutrients from the abiotic reservoirs like the soil and the air and water, but some of it is produced as waste, as byproducts, and that's why it's cycled back into the abiotic reservoir. Consumers here, they consume producers, and some of it is byproducts that go back into the abiotic reservoir as well. So here's Kirby, they consume it. And as he flies away, he drops a little present for us. So that present for us is utilized by the detritivores and also the decomposers. So they end up decomposing the remains or waste, and then converts that into inorganic materials, which goes back into that abiotic reservoir. Okay. What's the difference between the tridivores and decomposers? Okay, the tridivores also kind of do that the same. So what's the difference between the two? It's more.
Oh, because the decomposers are microscopic.
Yes, the decomposer are microscopic, like the protists and bacteria and stuff like that, while the tridivores are bigger, usually. But, I mean, give or take, right? Fungus, right? That's actually categorized as a decomposer, but that's something you can actually see. It's not actually not actually microscopic. So one of the chemical cycles I want you to know is the carbon cycle. So we already talked about organic material, right? It's made out of carbon. So we have the abiotic reservoir. We already talked about air, water, and in this case, fossil fuels as well. So we start off the carbon cycle by producers. They undergo photosynthesis, and they remove carbon dioxide from the air and converts it into carbohydrates, and we utilize this equation again. Okay. So what this equation is talking about is carbon dioxide, and water forms this glucose molecule, and as a byproduct, it produces oxygen. This is what happens in photosynthesis. And also in the Calvin cycle, which we'll talk about later. The consumers, they eat up the producers. That will end up passing the carbohydrates into the food chain, right? So the primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers. And part of the consumption, they will utilize cellular respiration. This is when they end up utilizing the carbohydrate and converts it into carbon dioxide to produce energy. So this is the equation for that. So here's that. What is this chemical called again? Same thing as glucose, yes, Glucose utilizes glucose with oxygen and produces byproduct is carbon dioxide and water. And by doing this, we're providing energy, which is called ATP. Okay, that's the energy that we use. Finally, we have the decomposer and the tridivores. They end up breaking down any that kind of decaying carbon compounds and releases it as carbon dioxide. So waste and death, and this is going back to what you were talking about, the decomposing and stuff, and how it produces carbon dioxide and methane and stuff like that. The other thing is that if we burn material, that also releases carbon dioxide too. And not only does that releases carbon dioxide, if we're burning things, usually we're burning trees or burning plants, right? Which uses up carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. So we actually burn plants or producers, they're not going to end up absorbing that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So we're going to have more and more carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And what's that going to happen? I mean, what's that going to cause? We have more carbon dioxide. It doesn't kill the oxygen, but what's temperature-wise and things like
greenhouse gas.
Yes, the more greenhouse gases. If you have more greenhouse gases, what's it going to do with the temperature? Increase, right? Because it absorbs heat. There is a phosphorus cycle. I don't want to go too much into this, but I do want to at least pinpoint some things about it. Phosphorus is necessary for nucleic acid, for our phospholipid. We will talk about this. Phospholipids kind of make up our cell membrane. And ATP, what is ATP again?
Energy.
Yeah, our energy that we use through cellular respiration. Also within vertebrates, we actually use phosphorus within our bones and teeth as well. It's not found in air, which is kind of interesting.
However, we do find it within rocks, and they are mined for fertilizer. Okay. So more of it is used up than can be replaced, and that's why we end up mining it for fertilizer, or we end up grounding bone to produce fertilizer, since it's not readily available within the air. Okay, nitrogen is also used within proteins and nucleic acids. They do also have an abiotic reservoir within the air and soil. 80% of the air is nitrogen gas. The plants, they can't use nitrogen gas. So what they need is they need some sort of bacteria that ends up doing this process called nitrogen fixation. Okay? They end up converting the nitrogen gas into ammonia. And ammonia, which ends up becoming ammonium, and that's then used up by the plants, the ammonium.
Wait, go back.
Go back. NH4 plus is ammonium. NH3 is ammonia. N2 is? No, it's nitrogen gas. Not quite. Okay, humans, they increase the amount of nitrogen gas by burning fossil fuels and agricultural practices. And we also do it by increasing the amount of nitrogen fertilizer we use, which contains a lot of nitric oxide. This nitric oxide is also a greenhouse gas, and so what's going to do with the temperature? Yeah, it increases as well. It also causes pollutions within the aquatic systems as well. Okay, the nitrogen cycle. So we have some symbiotic nitrogen fixating bacteria that are living within the roots of certain plants. So they are readily converting nitrogen gas into ammonia, which becomes ammonium, so that the plants can utilize. Okay, these certain plants are the legumes, those that produces like beans. And then there's other that are just living amongst the soil. These are the ones that are free living nitrogen fixating bacteria. And these will end up converting nitrogen gas into ammonia, which becomes ammonium. So this is just amongst the soil, not living on the plant's roots. So this ammonium is taken up by producers. Some of the bacteria is converted to nitrate, which is NO3 minus. And this is easier for producers to utilize. They can utilize ammonium, but it's easier for them to use nitrate. So they use ammonium, producers uses ammonium and nitrate to make up amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks for proteins. Now, of course, consumers, they'll eat either producers or other consumers. They'll end up digesting the proteins that they eat, like if we eat certain meats or even our plants that have proteins. We'll digest those proteins into amino acids, and then we'll use that amino acids to build other proteins as well, like whether it's our muscles or other parts of our body as well. Bless you. So yeah, I just mentioned this already. So there are some consumers that eat other consumers for these proteins. We don't end up utilizing all this nitrogen within our body. Some of it is used as waste products. So we use it, it just passes through our system and it becomes a waste product. And it's actually very toxic
for us in our body. So that's why we have to convert it into a less toxic version of it, which is found in our urine, which is urea. And then we end up passing this urine out of our body. And this will then cycle back into the soil and water for the plants to utilize. The decomposer and detritivores, they will end up consuming detritus, which is just decaying matter, whether if it's animals or plants. And then they will release this ammonium back into the soil. There are also other bacteria that is found within the soil, the denitrifying bacteria. If you say denitrifying, what do you think of?
Getting rid of nitrogen.
Getting rid of something, right? So since it's under low oxygen, it's going to take away that oxygen from the nitrate. And if you take away that, then you end up releasing just nitrogen gas. Since that makes sense, right? I mean, it's going to, since it's under low oxygen conditions, it's going to end up taking away the oxygen within nitrate here, so that all you're left with is nitrogen gas. This isn't that good because nitrogen gas is not helpful for plants, right? Plants need to actually use ammonium instead. Yeah, that was a slightly chemistry lesson. Okay, there is this thing called nutrient pollution. And nutrient pollution is partially due to agricultural fertilizer, since they have a lot of nitrogen and also phosphorus. There's also runoff from animal waste, right, containing a lot of this nitrogen products as well. Some dishwasher detergents contains phosphorus, and human waste, of course, also contains some of these waste products as well, nitrogen and phosphorus. So the thing about this, it causes algae and cyanobacteria to grow, which is okay, but then the thing is when they decay, the bacteria that is causing this decay, the decomposer, they will use up the oxygen within that particular area. So they deplete the oxygen within the water here. Notice how this area here is called the dead zone, due to the fact that they deplete so much oxygen that it will end up causing death in that area. Those aquatic organisms that can swim away from it will swim away, displacing them. But there are a lot of aquatic animals here that cannot swim away, so they're subjected to no oxygen at all, so they end up dying of heat. So there is this drive for conservation and restoration. Conservation biology, we're basically trying to help us understand and counter the loss of biodiversity. While restoration ecology, we're trying to restore and have methods to help restore certain areas back to its natural state before like human causes damage to it. So part of the restoration, part of the restoration part of the restoration part of the thing is through bioremediation. Okay, so we end up using a living organism to help detoxify or purify certain polluted ecosystems. So there are some bacteria that are used to help clean up mining sites and oil spills. And I think some of it was used for the BP oil spill that we encountered. And this particular plant is also helping to detoxify certain chemicals that are found within that area there. There are also restoration products to help return things to its natural state. One of the things of the projects is to replant certain vegetation. If we end up fencing off non-native animals, they're not going to be as invasive. It's not going to
produce so much of an impact to the native animals in that particular area or native species. Also, the removing of dams may also help restore some ecosystems as well. An example of this is the Kissimmee River. What happened is that a while back, a canal was actually made from this river, and so they end up draining a lot of acres of wetland, and that will end up causing an impact to both fishes and birds. So there's this restoration project as shown over here, where they're starting to remove some of these dams and also widening some other structures as well to restore this river back to its natural state. The park phase 1 of it has shown some restoration. So after the removal of some dams and modifying channels and stuff, it ends up restoring the wildlife and birds in this area. This was the former canal area, but you can see that there's this wildlife coming back to that area. So there is still hope, basically. Overall, we're trying to help sustain having a sustainable development occurring. This is helping us to be more responsible of managing the amount of resources that we have and conserving that resources as well. So we want to help us to publicly educate the population so that we can do this together to help make sure that the amount of resources that we use, that we don't end up over exploiting the nature and the environment. The other thing is we need cooperation of all nations as well, because even if the U.S. were to have this conservation or restoration kind of project and the rest of the world doesn't, then the planet is still going to be dying off, and so we need all nations to be a part of it. Acknowledgements, pictures that I use. That's it.